Today we will talk about geos, and no worries, you're not back in school, but we are taking a deeper look into countries and, for example, for which geos native ads make the most sense. Hi everyone, my name is Marcel Sattler. I'm the founder of PurpleBlack, a native advertising only agency. So what we are doing on a daily basis is we are running and investing our clients' money into performance campaigns with traffic sources like Taboola and Outbrain. And we're doing it on a very profitable level because, as mentioned before, we just run performance campaigns. That means that a client, when he put £1 in, he wants to get back at least £3 to £4. And therefore, I'm pretty sure that I can tell you a little bit more about the countries where native ads make the most sense. In general, to give you a briefly overview, we are based in Austria, but we run campaigns all over the world. And of course, there are some differences. There are differences when you advertise, for example, in Germany or in the US. The differences when you advertise in Canada or Australia and so on. So I think you get a point. But the good news here is native ads in general are working almost everywhere in every country. And in every country there is, or in every region of the world, there is more or less a few local players with native ads. So there are some smaller traffic sources, but the big major traffic sources like Taboola and Outbrain and Yahoo Gemini, they have placements all over the world. So they have a very broad inventory which reaches the whole globosphere. But in a nutshell, when you have, for example, an international product or service, then you can go, for example, for one of the big major traffic sources like Taboola and Outbrain, and you catch the whole world with it, which is super useful and make it a little bit easier for you. I very often get the question, hey, is there a difference if I advertise in the US or in North Africa? And there definitely is. So in general, the US are a very strong market for native ads. 50% of the whole native ad spending are invested in the US. And the other 50% get spent all over the world. So I think you get the point how big or which important market for native ads the US are. But it doesn't mean that you just have to advertise in the US. Of course, in the US there are the highest spendings. But of course, there's also the most competition. So that means when you launch a campaign there, you automatically have a lot of competitors there, and the conversion rates in general are lower and the CPCs and CPMs are higher. So that's the point here. You have the biggest market, but also the biggest competition because everyone wants to run in the US. And I don't know why, to be honest, because when I speak with affiliates and they're based in Europe or Asia, all of them want to go to the US because they think the US are the biggest market, the money there grows on trees. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Of course, it's a very huge market, and in the US general, there are a lot of people which can invest money into buy some things online and all that stuff. No worries about it. But of course, there's a lot of competition, and especially in the beginning, it's very hard because there are always some advertisers which are more advanced like you, and they normally will kick you out of the market because of other bids, because of other strategies. But of course, the rest of the world is still very interesting because there are huge markets, incredibly huge markets, which have, for example, a very low CPM and very less competition. And some of the markets, when you switch to Europe, are, for example, the more Mediterranean countries like France, Spain, Portugal, because there are a lot of people, also a lot of older people, but very less competition. Therefore, the CPMs are way lower, for example, when you compare it with Germany, which is one of the strongest markets for us in Europe. And same when we go to the Asia market, because there are also countries where are more competition and countries where is less competition. And when we also take a look into Asia, it's very interesting because there are a lot of smaller platforms, smaller traffic sources out there because there are a lot of restrictions, for example, in China. But let's come back to my sample in Europe. So when you compare Germany with France, of course, Germany have higher conversion rates and it's in general a very strong market here in the middle of Europe. But of course, France have lower conversion rates, but also lower CPMs. And the click prices are around about a quarter or up to 30% cheaper than in Germany. And that makes sometimes a big change in the conversion, of course, but also in the profit at the end of the day. So just to keep in mind, it's not always the the usefulest move or the smartest move to go to the biggest market with the biggest competition. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, smaller markets or smaller niches where is less competition, where are less CPMs, is more useful for you. But of course, there are also some extreme samples. So for example, let's take India. In India, for mobile devices, we have an extremely low bid, which is just about 1 or 2 cents. So it's incredibly cheap to receive clicks there. That's the good news. And there's a lot of population, which is also the good news. But the bad news here is it's very hard to bring them to a conversion because in general, they're a not very high converting market. So they have extremely low CPMs, extremely low CPCs, but unfortunately also extremely low conversion rates. So you have to find the peak point for each country where it makes sense to advertise, where you have cheap CPMs, cheap CPCs, but also a good conversion rate. That's the point here when you take a look into the market. A very crucial point when you advertise on different markets is the cultural point. Because, as mentioned before, a lot of people want to advertise in the US. But when you're now from, let's say from Thailand, they have a different culture than people in the US. And even in the US, there's some different culture types like West Coast, East Coast. So usually when you not live in the country, it's very hard for you to know exactly what the audience needs and all that stuff. So there are cultural differences. And therefore, it's super important for you not just to see, okay, where did I get good CPCs, CPMs, but also to understand the cultural differences. For example, when we advertise for international campaigns, we have more or less for each country a completely different campaign. And not just the campaign is a different one, but also the headlines are different and the offer pages, the editorials are different. Because when we advertise, let's say Germany and US, we have completely different approaches, completely other written copywriting, and of course a lot of different things in the offer pages when you directly compare each other. So just to give you a brief information about it, in Germany we put in more data, more information, more facts, because normally they want to receive all the informations. And in the US we are going more to FOMO, more of trust with badges and all that stuff, and a little bit more aggressive because, and don't get me wrong, I just speak here in general. So please not just copy it blind for your campaign. But just in general, they are taking faster out the credit card than people in Europe. So just with a black and white comparison. So let's recap it very fast. 50% of native ad money are invested in the US. And the rest of the world are the other 50%. You have to find the peak point between a cheap CPC, cheap CPM, but also good conversion rates. And a very important point is also to understand the cultural differences, to understand exactly what the market needs, what's the market language, what's the audience language, how normal advertorials, how normal offer pages look like in the market that are converting. A very, very important point. I hope you liked that video and it helps you for your next campaign. If so, I would extremely appreciate it when you give me a thumbs up for this video, and of course when you subscribe to my channel to get notified when I upload a new video about native ads here on YouTube. Have a good one, see you next time.